Get out of here right now, or I'll call security. Alejandro Rivas angrily slammed his hand on the armrest of his wheelchair. The girl who had appeared out of nowhere in his private office didn't budge an inch. Her hair was dirty, her clothes torn, and her cheeks stained with earth. But her eyes, those eyes, looked at him with such determination that he was taken aback. "Dad, I need to talk to you," she said in a firm voice. "Dad? Are you crazy? I don't have children. Get out of here before my mother, Isabel Morales, arrives." The words hit Alejandro like a punch to the gut. He froze, looking at the girl's face. Green eyes, the shape of her nose, even the stubborn tilt of her chin. It was impossible. "This proves nothing," he muttered, trying to stay calm. "Isabel, we broke up 2 years ago. She never told me about this." "Because you didn't answer her calls?" the girl interrupted. "She sent you letters, messages, even came to your office, but you already had another girlfriend." Alejandro closed his eyes. He vaguely remembered Isabel trying to contact him after the breakup, but he was angry, hurt. Veronica had already stormed into his life like a hurricane, and he ignored everything related to Isabel. "What's your name?" he finally asked. "Emilia Morales. I'm 7 years old." 7 years old. Alejandro quickly calculated. The dates matched perfectly. "Even if you are my daughter, which hasn't been proven, what are you doing here? How did you get in?" Emilia shrugged. "I got into the elevator when that man in the suit wasn't looking. I need your help. My mom is very sick. If you need money for her treatment, I can give it." Alejandro said. "I don't need your money," Emilia interrupted with such force that he was surprised. "I want you to come with me to the hospital, see her, talk to her." "I can't do that, Isabel and I. My mom is going to die," the girl interrupted him. The simplicity and brutality of these words left Alejandro speechless. Emilia approached his wheelchair without fear and placed her small hand on his. "Dad, I know you can walk again." Alejandro sharply pulled his hand away. "What? What did you say? That I can walk again? But first, you have to remember what it's worth doing for." "That's impossible. The doctor said my injury is irreversible. I've been in this wheelchair for a year. And doctors don't know everything," Emilia said with the confidence of someone who had seen too much for her age. "Mom said that before the accident you were very strong, you could do anything." "Your mom talks too much," Alejandro replied. "She also said that after the accident, you became very sad. And when people are very sad, the body gives up." Alejandro looked intently at the girl. She was a child, but there was something in her words that troubled him. "Why do you think I can walk?" "Because yesterday I saw you in a dream. You were standing, holding Mom to put her in a beautiful car, and you were both happy." "Dreams are not reality, girl." "Sometimes they are," Emilia replied, "when you dream very, very hard." A tense silence followed. Alejandro looked at the girl who claimed to be his daughter. She was right. Her eyes were exactly like Isabel's, and she had the same direct and straightforward manner of speaking. "Where is your mom?" he finally asked. "In the General Hospital, room 204. She hasn't woken up in 3 days. Who's looking after you?" "I look after myself, but now I need your help to take care of her." Alejandro felt a strange pressure in his chest. For a year, he hadn't felt anything like responsibility or concern for another person. "Emilia, listen to me carefully. Even if you are my daughter, which is not proven, I am not the person you need. Look at me. I'm broken. I can't even take care of myself." "You could try," she said. "No." "Why?" "Because broken things don't get fixed." Emilia looked at him with a sadness that shouldn't be in the eyes of a 7-year-old. "My mom says you used to be different, that you were good." "Your mom is wrong. I was never good." "Then why, when I look at you, do I feel like I'm home?" This question hit Alejandro harder than any accusation. He was speechless, looking at the girl who had appeared out of nowhere, claiming to be his daughter and promising impossible miracles. "Dad," Emilia said softly, "are you going to help me or not?" "All right, I'll go with you to the hospital, but only to show you that you're wrong about me." Alejandro turned his wheelchair towards the private elevator, and Emilia walked beside him in silence. The silence remained throughout the drive in the adapted Mercedes driven by his chauffeur. "Mr. Rivas, are you sure you want to go to the General Hospital?" Roberto asked, looking in the rearview mirror. "Yes, Roberto, and no questions asked." When they arrived, Alejandro realized he hadn't been in a hospital for over a year. The smell of disinfectant and the sound of machines instantly took him back to the days of his hospitalization after the accident. "This way," Emilia said, taking control of the wheelchair without asking. The General Hospital was a sad and overcrowded place. The corridors were full of people, families sitting on the floor with plastic bags of homemade food. Alejandro felt uncomfortable under the curious stares attracted by his wheelchair, expensive car, and elegant clothes. Room 204, Emilia whispered. They went up to the second floor. The door was ajar. Alejandro pushed the wheelchair forward and peeked inside. What he saw left him speechless. Isabel lay on a narrow bed, connected to many tubes and monitors. Her skin had a yellowish tint, and she looked thinner than he remembered. But even sick, she remained beautiful. Brown hair framed her pale face, and her hands rested on a worn blanket. "Mom," Emilia whispered, running to the bed. "I brought Dad." Alejandro approached slowly. A part of him wanted to run away, but another part, dormant for many months, pushed him forward. "Isabel," he said softly. She slowly opened her eyes. When she saw him, a faint smile appeared on her lips. "Alejandro, you came. Emilia said you were sick. She said you were her daughter." The moment Alejandro had feared had finally arrived. He looked into Isabel's eyes, searching for deceit, but saw only exhaustion and honesty. "It's true," she said. "I tried to tell you. I called hundreds of times, came to your office 3 times, but Veronica never let me in." Alejandro closed his eyes, remembering Isabel's persistent calls after their breakup. Veronica had said it was an ex who wouldn't leave him alone, and he had believed every word. "Why didn't you insist?" "Because I had my pride," Isabel replied with a sad smile. "And because I thought if you didn't want to be with me, you wouldn't want to be with your daughter either." "Isabel, you don't have to explain anything. It's all in the past." Emilia took her mother's hand and squeezed it. "Mom, tell Dad what the doctor said." Isabel looked at her daughter with alarm. "Emilia, you don't need to say anything," her mother insisted. "Yes, you do," the girl insisted. Isabel sighed and looked at Alejandra. "I have kidney failure. I need a transplant, but I don't have medical insurance, and the treatment is very expensive. How much time do you have left?" "The doctors say it could be a few weeks, a month if I'm lucky." Alejandro felt as if the air had been knocked out of his lungs. He looked at Emilia, who was looking at her mother with love and terror. "How much does the treatment cost?" "Alejandro, I didn't come to ask you for money. Emilia came on her own. I'm just asking how much it costs." Isabel exchanged a glance with her daughter and replied, "A transplant costs about 500, 0 pesos. But first, I need dialysis and other procedures. 500, 0, maybe a million." For Alejandro, 1,000,000 pesos was what he spent on a business dinner. But for Isabel, it was impossible. "Are you on the waiting list for a donor?" he asked. "Yes, but it could take years," she replied. "I don't have that much time." "I can be a donor," Alejandro suddenly said. "What? What?" "I can donate one of my kidneys. We're compatible, right?" Isabel looked at him in surprise. "I don't know, we'd have to do tests, but Alejandro, you shouldn't do this." "I should," he replied. "Why?" Alejandro looked at Emilia, who was looking at him with hopeful eyes. "Because she's my daughter, and you were the only woman who truly loved me." Tears streamed down Isabel's cheeks. "Alejandro, it's been 2 years. You have another life now." "No, I have nothing. I've been dead since the accident, but now, maybe I have a reason to try to live again." Emilia walked to the wheelchair and took Alejandro's hand. "See, Mom? I told you Dad was good." Isabel smiled through her tears. "Yes, my dear, you were right. Dr. Mendoza, I need to get tested for kidney donation compatibility as soon as possible." Alejandro called his personal doctor. From the hospital on the other end of the line, the doctor sounded puzzled. "Mr. Rivas, are you sure? Your current condition isn't ideal for major surgery. Besides, I'll need to examine you." "Doctor, do the test today." "All right, come in this afternoon. But first, I want to ask, have you thought about resuming physical therapy?" Alejandro looked at Emilia, who was sitting on the floor in the hospital corridor, drawing in a worn notebook. "Why do you ask?" "I've seen cases where a strong purpose helps recovery, and you've just found a very strong one." After the call, Alejandro walked over to Emilia. "What are you drawing?" "Our house," she replied without looking up. "Here's you, my mom, and here's me, and a big garden where we can play." The drawing was simple but detailed. 3 stick figures holding hands against a backdrop of a house with yellow windows and flowers in the garden. "Emilia, where have you been living since your mom got sick?" "With Mrs. Carmen, the neighbor. But she has many grandchildren, and there's not much space. Sometimes I sleep in the hospital." Alejandro felt a pang of guilt. His daughter was practically living on the street while he wallowed in self-pity. "That ends tonight. You're coming with me." Emilia looked up from her drawing. Seriously? Seriously. And when Mom gets out of the hospital, she can come too. Yes. Emilia smiled and continued drawing. Dad, can you take me somewhere? I want you to meet someone. An hour later, Alejandro found himself in a small rehabilitation gym in the city center. The place was modest but clean, filled with exercise equipment and mats. Marco Hernandez? The receptionist asked. Yes, tell him Alejandro Rivas is here. A few minutes later, a sturdy man in his 40s with a beard appeared. When he saw Alejandro, his expression changed. What are you doing here? Marco, I need to talk to you. We have nothing to talk about. I already told you I can't continue working with you. I know, but everything has changed. Marco looked at Emilia, who was watching curiously. Who is she? My daughter. Didn't know you had a daughter. I didn't either until today. Marco sighed and invited them into his office. Last time we met, you said therapy was a waste of time. I was wrong. What made you change your mind? Alejandro looked at Emilia, who was sitting on a chair, swinging her legs. She said I could walk again, and for the first time in a year, I want to believe her. Marco studied Alejandro's face. As a physical therapist, he had learned to read patients. The hopelessness he had seen in the businessman's eyes 6 months ago was gone. You know what this means, right? Months of hard work, pain, and maybe you'll only be able to take a few steps. I know, because now I have a reason to try. Marco looked at Emilia. Do you believe your dad can walk? Yes, she replied without hesitation, but he has to believe too. And do you believe, Alejandro? He thought about it. I haven't felt hope for anything in a long time, but I want to believe. That's enough to start, Marco said, but I have a condition. What is it? I want you to tell me the truth about why you want to walk. Don't tell me pretty stories. Alejandro took a deep breath. Because my daughter is watching me. Because the woman I love is dying. And because for the first time in a year, I don't want to be dead while alive. Marco slowly nodded. All right, we start tomorrow at 6:00 a.m. The sooner, the better. If you want miracles, you have to work for them. That evening, Alejandro settled Emilia into one of the guest rooms of his penthouse. While she showered, he called Isabel to tell her about the physical therapy. Are you sure you want to do this? She asked. I'm sure. Isabel, I want to ask you something. Tell me, do you still love me? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I never stopped loving you, but you need to decide if you want to be the man I fell in love with or the man you became after the accident. I'll be better than either of those two. I hope so for Emilia's sake, and for yours. After the call, Alejandro headed to his room. Passing by Emilia's room, he heard her talking to herself. Virgin Mary, my dad is starting to believe. Help him walk, please, and let Mom get well. Amen. Alejandro smiled for the first time in months. Maybe miracles were possible? Maybe they just needed faith and a lot of hard work? The next day, exactly at 6:00 a.m., he was in Marco's gym ready to start. What do you mean Alejandro isn't coming to the board meeting? Veronica Sandoval paced back and forth in her office. Phone to her ear, her assistant had delivered the news she least wanted to hear. He says he's busy with family matters. Family matters? The secretary nervously asked. Alejandro doesn't have a family. Veronica hung up and walked to the window. Ever since Alejandro had been in a wheelchair, she had gradually taken control of Rivas's companies. At first, it was temporary help, but then she became indispensable. The shareholders respected her, the employees obeyed her, and Alejandro had lost interest in the business. Suddenly, the phone rang again. Hello? This is a reporter. I want to confirm information about Mr. Rivas. What information? From his daughter. Veronica felt the ground slip from under her feet. Let the reporter in, she thought. Young and ambitious, he would do anything for a scoop. Ms. Sandoval, my name is Javier Moreno from El Nacional newspaper. I have information that Alejandro Rivas has just acknowledged an illegitimate daughter. Can you confirm? I don't know what you're talking about. I have photos of him entering the general hospital with a girl, and also records that he hired a private Dr. Mendoza for organ compatibility tests. Veronica remained calm, but her mind was working at its limit. Mr. Moreno, Alejandro Rivas is a very private person. I'm sure any personal decision will be announced at the right time. So, you're not denying he has a daughter? I neither confirm nor deny anything. Good day. When the reporter left, Veronica poured herself a whiskey, even though it was only 11:00 a.m. She had worked for 2 years to get what she wanted, and she wasn't going to let some girl who appeared out of nowhere ruin everything. She picked up the phone and dialed a number. Detective Ruiz's number. This is Veronica Sandoval. I need you to investigate someone, Isabel Morales, who works at the General Hospital, and her daughter, Emilia Morales. What kind of investigation? The detective asked. Everything. Medical history, economic situation, past behavior, anything that might be useful. When do you need it by? Yesterday. 3 days later, Veronica received a complete dossier. Isabel had huge medical debts. She had lost several jobs due to sick leave and had tried to contact Alejandro many times after their breakup. The girl often missed school and practically lived on the street. Excellent, Veronica said. The next call was to the most expensive lawyer in the city. Licensee Vega, I need you to prepare a lawsuit for parental rights termination in custody. Against whom? Against Alejandro Rivas. Silence on the other end of the line. Miss Sandoval, do you realize what you're asking? Perfectly. Alejandro is not in a position to care for a child. His disability, depression, social isolation, it's all documented. Moreover, the girl is in a state of neglect. What evidence do you have? The girl is practically abandoned while her mother is in the hospital. She's slept in hospitals and with strangers. Alejandro took her in without any legal documentation, without psychological evaluations, nothing. He is impulsive and unstable. And what do you propose? That the girl be temporarily taken into state custody while Alejandro's mental capacity to make important decisions is evaluated, and that I be appointed her legal guardian and permanent manager of his assets. This will be very public, Miss Sandoval. The media. Let me take care of the media. Licensee Vega prepared the documents that same week. Veronica also hired a private psychiatrist to assess Alejandro's emotional instability and a social worker to document Emilia's unsuitable living conditions. The plan was perfect. Alejandro would lose custody of his daughter, be declared mentally incapacitated, and Veronica would retain control of the company. The girl would be sent to a foster family, and Isabel. Well, Isabel would take care of herself. On Friday morning, Alejandro received a summons to court. What is this? He asked his lawyer on the phone. A lawsuit for parental rights termination in custody. Someone is claiming that you are not capable of caring for the girl and managing your affairs. Who? Veronica Sandoval. Alejandro felt a rage he hadn't experienced since the accident. When is the hearing? Next Monday. Alejandro, this is serious. If the court decides you are unfit, you could lose everything. I won't lose my daughter. Then you need a good lawyer and proof of your stability and ability to walk. Alejandro looked at the gym where he had been training with Marco for the past 2 weeks. Progress had been minimal. He could barely move his toes and stand for a few seconds with support. How much time do I have? 3 days. That's enough. After the call, Emilia ran into the room. Dad, why are you sad? I'm not sad, dear, just worried. Why? Alejandro picked her up and sat her on his lap. Do you love me? Of course. And do you want to stay with me? Yes. Why are you asking? Because we might have to convince a judge that we are a real family. Emilia looked at him with her green eyes and smiled. Dad, we are already a real family. We just need to show it to others. On Monday morning, the family court was full of reporters. The news that Alejandro Rivas had a daughter had spread instantly, and now the whole city wanted to know what would happen with custody. Alejandro arrived in his wheelchair, wearing his best suit. Emilia walked beside him, also dressed up, in a blue dress he had bought especially for the occasion. Are you nervous? He asked quietly. A little, but you're with me, so everything will be fine. Across the corridor, Veronica was talking to her lawyers. She was in a strict gray suit with a serious expression on her face. Seeing Alejandro, she smiled coldly. Your Honor, calling case Sandoval versus Rivas, the clerk announced. Judge Martinez was an elderly man with a reputation for being fair but strict. He reviewed the documents as the parties took their seats. I understand this is a lawsuit for parental rights termination and custody. Licensee Vega, as counsel for the plaintiff, you may proceed. Veronica's lawyer confidently stood up. Your Honor, we are concerned about the well-being of the minor Emilia Morales. She lives in unsuitable conditions, and Mr. Rivas, due to his mental and physical condition, is unable to care for her. What evidence do you provide? Firstly, Mr. Rivas has suffered from severe depression since the accident. He is socially isolated, has abandoned his business responsibilities, and exhibits impulsive behavior, having taken the girl in without any legal documentation. Veronica stood to testify. Your Honor, I have known Alejandro for 3 years. After the accident, he completely changed. He became bitter, aggressive, and takes medication for depression. Last week, he suddenly claimed to be this girl's father without even taking a paternity test. Have you noticed any specific behaviors that concern you? Yes, Your Honor. Alejandro promises the girl that he can walk again, which is medically impossible. He creates false hopes. Furthermore, he is considering donating a kidney to the girl's mother, which indicates inadequate thinking. Alejandro clenched his fists. The lawyer placed a hand on his shoulder to calm him. Moreover, Veronica continued, the girl frequently misses school, sleeps in hospitals and with strangers. She needs stability, not the fantasy of a person who cannot accept his reality. When Veronica finished her testimony, the judge turned to Alejandro. Mr. Rivas, what do you say to these accusations? Alejandro straightened in his wheelchair. Your Honor, it is true that I have not been a good person this past year. The accident changed me. I became selfish and bitter, but meeting my daughter gave me a reason to change. How did you prove she's your daughter? I had a paternity test done last week. The results confirmed that Emilia is my biological daughter. What are your plans for her care? I will hire a nanny and a private tutor so she doesn't miss classes. I will continue physical therapy to recover as much as possible, and I will be the father she deserves. Mr. Rivas, medical reports indicate that your injury is irreversible. Don't you think you are giving the girl false hopes? Your Honor, 3 weeks ago I couldn't move any of my toes, and now I can move all of them and stand for a few seconds. Doctors are sometimes wrong. The judge made notes and looked at Emilia. Emilia, please come forward. The girl stood up and confidently walked to the stand, not looking scared. Hello, Judge. Hello, Emilia. Do you know why we are here? Yes, because Mrs. Veronica says my dad can't take care of me. And what do you think? That she's wrong. Why? Emilia took a deep breath and, with surprising clarity, said, Your Honor, I lived on the streets for 3 weeks. I was hungry, cold, and scared. But when I found Dad, all that ended. He bought me clothes, gave me a clean bed, and hugs me when I have nightmares. But aren't you scared that he's in a wheelchair? No, because people are not valued by how they walk, but by how they love. A murmur ran through the courtroom. The judge raised his hand, asking for silence. Emilia, what do you want? To stay with Dad, and I want Mom to get well, and I don't want money from anyone. I just want a family. Do you think your dad can walk again? Yes, sir, because he already started. What do you mean? Emilia looked at Alejandro and smiled. Dad, show them. Alejandro felt his heart pound faster. With great effort, he put his hands on the armrests of the chair and slowly, very slowly, stood up. His legs trembled, but he stood upright for almost 10 seconds before sitting down again. Absolute silence filled the courtroom. Your Honor, Alejandro said with an emotional voice, my daughter gave me back my life, and I will not let anyone take it away from me. The judge looked at Veronica, then at Alejandro, and finally at Emilia. This court rules that Emilia Morales remains under the custody of her father, Alejandro Rivas. Case closed. Emilia ran to Alejandro and hugged him. For the first time in over a year, Alejandro cried tears of happiness. Veronica left the courtroom with a distorted face. Reporters surrounded her, but she pushed them away without saying a word. Her plan had completely failed. And now Alejandro not only had a daughter, but had also publicly proven that he was recovering. That night, locked in her office, Veronica drank whiskey, reviewing the company's contracts. If she couldn't control Alejandro legally, she would have to find another way. The phone rang. It was Javier Moreno, the reporter. Miss Sandoval, do you have any comments about today's court session? No comment. Is it true that you and Mr. Rivas had a romantic relationship? Veronica straightened in her chair. What do you mean by that? I have photos of you together at several public events. Some say the lawsuit was out of jealousy. That's absurd. So you're not denying the relationship? Veronica hung up. Her reputation was ruined, her plan had failed, and the media was portraying her as a woman consumed by jealousy. She needed a brilliant move. She studied the company documents until she found what she was looking for: insurance policies. Rivas's company had multi-million-dollar coverage for fires and natural disasters. If the main office suffered damage, she, as interim manager, would be responsible for the reconstruction and insurance claims. She picked up the phone and dialed a number saved many years ago. Hal, it's Veronica. I need you to do me a favor. What kind? The kind we pay well for and never talk about. The next day, Alejandro arrived early at the gym for his training with Marco. His progress was slow, but steady. He could already stand for over a minute and take 3 steps with support. "How are you feeling?" Marco asked. "Different. Like I woke up from a very long nightmare. Emilia is at school. I hired a tutor to help her catch up. She's very smart. Tomorrow, Isabel will undergo additional tests in preparation for the transplant. Doctors say we have good chances of compatibility." Marco smiled, adjusting the weights for the exercises. "You know what I like most about all this?" he asked. "What?" "That you no longer talk like a defeated man." Alejandro was in the middle of his workout when his phone rang. It was Roberto, his chauffeur. "Mr. Rivas, the company building is on fire. The firefighters are already there, but the fire is very intense. I'm leaving now. Maybe it's better if I go?" "No, I'll go myself." Alejandro arrived at the Rivas company building as flames engulfed the first 3 floors. Firefighters battled the blaze and employees evacuated in panic. "Where's the fire chief?" he asked from his chair. "Here, Mr. Rivas, Captain Torres. Is everyone out?" "Yes, we're checking. It seems one employee is stuck on the 5th floor, in accounting." Alejandro knew the building perfectly and knew there was an emergency staircase leading directly there. "Captain, can I get there via the back stairs?" "Sir, you cannot." "Captain, I know this building better than anyone, and that employee is my responsibility." Before anyone could stop him, Alejandro steered his chair towards the back entrance. The smoke was thick, but he reached the freight elevator, which was still working. On the 5th floor, he found Carmen Vasquez, the company's oldest accountant, unconscious at her desk. Smoke filled the office, but the flames hadn't reached it yet. With all his strength, Alejandro managed to stand up and lift Carmen onto his lap. She wasn't very heavy, but the effort was immense. He managed to reach the elevator as the flames began to spread down the corridor. When the elevator doors opened on the ground floor, paramedics and firefighters rushed to them. Alejandro was covered in soot and coughing heavily, but Carmen was alive. "Alejandro," a familiar voice cried. It was Emilia, who had rushed from school after hearing about the fire. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm fine, my dear," he replied, hugging her tightly. Reporters who had arrived at the scene filmed everything. Alejandro carrying the employee, his heroic ascent in the elevator, the hug with his daughter. Hours later, these images were on all the news channels. That same night, in the hospital where Carmen was being examined, Alejandro received a call from Detective Ruiz. "Mr. Rivas, we need to talk. The fire was not accidental." "What do you mean?" "We found traces of an accelerant in several parts of the building. Someone deliberately set this fire. We have suspects, but I need to ask you, do you know anyone who would want to harm your company?" Alejandro immediately thought of Veronica, but he had no proof. Detective checked the building's insurance policies, and who had access outside of normal working hours. "We're already on it, Mr. Rivas. Be careful. If someone is willing to burn down a building to harm you, they might do something worse." After the call, Alejandro looked out the hospital window. For the first time in many months, he felt truly alive, but he also realized that someone very dangerous wanted to destroy everything he had built. Detective Ruiz's investigation progressed quickly. Security cameras from a neighboring building recorded a man entering the Rivas Company building at 2:00 a.m. More importantly, phone records showed several calls between Veronica Sandoval and Raul Mendoza, a man with a criminal record for arson. "Mr. Rivas, we have enough evidence to arrest Miss Sandoval." The detective informed him by phone. "When?" "Today. But I need your official statement." Alejandro was at the gym with Marco when he received the call. He had just taken 10 consecutive steps without assistance, his best result since the accident. "Marco, I need to go to the station." "What happened? Are you being arrested?" "Veronica for arson at my company." Marco whistled softly. "Be careful, Alejandro. Desperate people are capable of very dangerous things." At the station, Alejandro signed the statement while officers prepared the arrest warrant. Detective Ruiz showed him the evidence: phone calls, security camera footage, Raul Mendoza's testimony, who confessed in exchange for a reduced sentence. Mendoza says Miss Sandoval paid him 50 pesos to start the fire. She wanted it to look like an electrical accident, but he overdid it with the accelerant. She's already arrested. Agents are heading to her office now. 2 hours later, the news showed Veronica Sandoval being arrested in her office. She was charged with intentional arson, conspiracy, attempted murder, and corporate fraud. That evening, Alejandro had dinner with Emilia at the penthouse. She had seen the news at school. "Dad, why did Mrs. Veronica do that?" "Because sometimes people do very bad things when they're afraid of losing what they think is theirs." "But wasn't she your girlfriend?" Alejandro was surprised by his daughter's direct question. Yes, for a while, but I didn't truly love her. I was lost and sad after the accident. And did she love you? I don't know, my dear. I think she loved my money and my company more. Emilia nodded as if she understood perfectly. Dad, when will Mom get out of the hospital? Soon. Tomorrow we'll get the compatibility test results. If everything goes well, we can do the transplant next week. It'll be a little painful, but it's worth it. The next day, Dr. Mendoza gave them the best news. Alejandro and Isabel were fully compatible for kidney transplant. Both were in excellent condition for the operation. Mr. Rivas, your physical condition has significantly improved in recent weeks. Ms. Morales, you are stable and ready for transplant. When can we do it? Alejandro asked. Next Tuesday, but first, both of you need to sign all consents and understand the risks. That evening, Alejandro visited Isabel in the hospital. She looked more energetic since they learned the transplant was possible. Alejandro, I want you to know you don't have to do this. I'm not doing it out of obligation. I'm doing it because I love you. Isabel looked into his eyes. Really? I never stopped loving you. I just got lost for a while. And now I want to marry you after the transplant, when you recover. I want us to become a real family. Tears streamed down Isabel's cheeks. Have you told Amelia about this? I didn't want to ask you first. She'll be very happy. On the day of the operation, the whole country followed the news. Alejandro Rivas, the magnate who lost everything and got it back, donated a kidney to save his daughter's mother. The operation lasted 6 hours. Emilia waited at the hospital in the company of Marco and Carmen, the employee Alejandro had saved from the fire. Do you think everything will be all right? Carmen asked Emilia. Yes, my dad is very strong, and so is Mom. When Dr. Mendoza came out of the operating room, he had a smile on his face. Everything went perfectly. Both are stable and recovering. Emilia cheered with joy and hugged Marco. My family is complete now. A week later, both Alejandro and Isabel were home, recovering. The story made national headlines. The man who lost his ability to walk but found love, faith, and hope. Veronica's trial proceeded quickly. With all the evidence, she was sentenced to 8 years in prison for intentional arson and attempted murder. Justice? Alejandro muttered when he heard the verdict. For whom? Emilia asked. For everyone, my dear. For everyone. A year later, Alejandro woke up early and walked to his room window. Outside, the hotel gardens were perfectly decorated for the ceremony. He had spent months preparing for this day and wanted everything to be perfect. Nervously, he asked Marco, who had arrived early, to help him dress. Were you nervous on your wedding day? I was terrified, Marco laughed. But look, it's been 5 years and I'm still happily married. Alejandro put on the black tuxedo chosen specifically for the occasion. He no longer needed a wheelchair, although he still used canes for long distances. Doctors called him a medical miracle, but he knew the truth. Love was his best medicine. You know what I like most about all this? He told Marco, tying his tie. What? That 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. And today, I'm marrying the woman I love, and I have a daughter who gave me back hope. There was a knock at the door. It was Emilia, in a beautiful pink dress and with a wreath of flowers in her hair. Dad, are you ready? Mom's already nervous. How is she? More beautiful than ever. Isabel had fully recovered from the transplant and now worked part-time as a consultant for families in crisis at the hospital. She had found her calling, helping others going through difficulties. Emilia, can I ask you something? Of course, Dad. Are you happy that Mom and I are getting married? Dad, I've been waiting for this day since I met you. Of course, I'm happy. The ceremony took place in the hotel garden overlooking the sea. Alejandro invited only his closest ones, Marco and his family, Carmen and some company employees, Dr. Mendoza, and of course, Isabel and Emilia. When the music started, Alejandro took his canes and slowly walked to the altar. Each step reminded him of his journey from despair to hope, from loneliness to love, from defeat to struggle. Isabel appeared at the end of the aisle, radiant in a simple but elegant white dress. Emilia, who was her bridesmaid, walked beside her. Upon reaching the altar, Emilia took her father's and mother's hands and joined them. Now we are a real family, whispered Father Gonzalez, who had met the family during Isabel's recovery and officiated the ceremony. Alejandro, Isabel, you have faced many challenges to be here. You have faced illness, separation, despair, but love has kept you together. When it was time for the vows, Alejandro emotionally addressed Isabel. Isabel, 2 years ago, I thought I had lost everything dear to me. But you and Amelia taught me that the most precious things cannot be lost as long as we have faith. I promise to love you, take care of you, and be the husband and father you deserve. I promise to wake up every day grateful for the second chance you gave me. Isabel wiped a tear and replied, Alejandro, I never stopped believing in you, even when you stopped believing in yourself. I promise to love you in good times and bad, to be your companion in everything that awaits us, and I promise that our family will always be united by love. When they kissed, Emilia shouted, Hooray! Mom and Dad got married! All the guests laughed and applauded. Alejandro picked up Emilia and kissed her on the forehead. You know, Princess, that you made all this possible? During the reception, the reporter who had followed the story from the beginning approached Emilia. Emilia, how do you feel now that your family is complete? Very happy, but my family was always complete. It was just a little broken before. Do you still believe in miracles? Emilia looked at her father, who was slowly dancing with Isabel, barely leaning on his cane. I didn't perform a miracle. I just reminded Dad that love can do anything. What are your plans now? We're going to live together in a new house, and Dad will continue to help others walk again. That night, after all the guests had left, Alejandro, Isabel, and Emilia sat on the terrace of their suite, looking at the stars. You know what? Alejandro said. I think for the first time in my life, I'm truly happy. Why for the first time? Isabel asked. Because before I had money, success, recognition, but I didn't have true love. I didn't have a family. I didn't have a real purpose. And now I have everything that truly matters. Emilia snuggled up to her parents. Dad, tomorrow we'll start building the foundation? Yes, my dear. Tomorrow we'll start helping other children who need to find their families. What will it be called? Emilia asked. Alejandro looked at Isabel, who smiled and nodded. The Emilia Foundation. So we always remember that miracles exist when we have faith. 5 years later, Alejandro walked independently to the podium in the main hall of the Emilia Foundation's Comprehensive Rehabilitation Center. Before him were more than 200 families who had received help from the program. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alejandro Rivas, and 7 years ago I was in a wheelchair, convinced that my life was over. Warm applause filled the hall. In the front row, Isabel smiled proudly, holding hands with Emilia, who was now 12 years old. She had grown into a confident and bright girl. Today we are here to celebrate that the Emilia Foundation has helped over 500 families reunite and provided free treatment and rehabilitation to over 1,000 people. More applause. Alejandro looked towards the stage where Marco was supervising a group of physical therapists working with children in wheelchairs. But I want to tell you how it all started with a 7-year-old girl who came into my office and said something that changed my life forever. You can walk again. Emilia blushed as all eyes turned to her. At that moment, I thought she was crazy. Doctors said I would never walk again, but she wasn't just talking about my legs. She was talking about my heart, my soul, my ability to love. Alejandro paused and drank some water. Over these 5 years, the Emilia Foundation has grown to 3 rehabilitation centers, a family reunification program, and an organ donation clinic. But most importantly, we learned miracles come from heaven with love. In the audience was Carmen Vasquez, now the Foundation's administrative director, along with several families who had gone through similar challenges. Allow me to introduce some of the families who have become part of our program. First on stage was Maria Gonzalez, a 40-year-old woman who walked with crutches. 3 years ago, I was in a car accident, and doctors said I would never walk again. My 8-year-old son couldn't understand why his mom couldn't play with him anymore. When we came to the Emilia Foundation, I received free physical therapy. My son received psychological support, and I realized that being a good mom doesn't depend on whether you can run. Today, I can walk. I work as a consultant for other moms, and my son says I'm his hero. Maria looked at her son, who applauded enthusiastically. Next to speak was Roberto Martinez, a young man who had lost his parents in an accident. I'm 25, and I was left alone, caring for my 3 younger siblings. I didn't know how to keep the family together. The Emilia Foundation helped me find a job, provided scholarships for my siblings, and legal support so I could become their official guardian. After several similar stories, Alejandro returned to the podium. Each of these stories reminds me why we do this work, because we believe that every family deserves a second chance, that every person deserves to believe in the possibility of a better life. Isabel stood up and walked onto the stage. She now had a degree in social work and led the family reunification program. When my daughter said she had found her father, I thought she was fantasizing. Alejandro and I had broken up badly, and he had a new life. But Emilia saw what we couldn't, the love that was still between us. Today, 5 years after our reunion, we are not just a happy family, but we have also helped hundreds of other families find their path to healing. Finally, Emilia came onto the stage. She was no longer the small and frail girl who had once appeared in Alejandro's office. She was a confident teenager with plans to study medicine to continue helping others. When I was little, I thought miracles were something from movies, magical things that happened suddenly. But now, I know that miracles are the result of hard work, love, and never giving up. She looked proudly at her father. My dad didn't start walking by magic. He worked every day for months. My mom didn't get better on her own. She had surgery and long treatment. Our family didn't become happy on its own. We had to learn patience, forgiveness, and unconditional love. But the most important thing I learned is, when you help others, your own life becomes bigger. That's why the Emilia Foundation will grow so more families can find their miracle. The event ended with all the families singing together and Alejandro hugging Isabel and Emilia, thinking about how far they had come. "You know what Emilia said?" he asked. "Dad, you were right from the beginning. Sometimes miracles don't come from heaven, but from the heart." Emilia smiled and hugged her parents. And most importantly, miracles never end. There are always more, and they are waiting for someone to believe in them. Were you touched by the story of Alejandro, Isabel, and Emilia? This is a beautiful story of love, overcoming adversity, and second chances, showing that the greatest miracles are born in the heart, and it's never too late to change your life. If this story touched your soul as much as it touched ours, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear that anything is possible when there is love and determination. Your support means a lot to us. If you want to keep watching inspiring stories, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new story that can change your day. We want to get to know you better. Tell us in the comments what country you're watching us from. We are happy to know that our stories reach hearts around the world. And do you believe that love can truly move mountains, like in this family's story?